Whether you think the SIS is a student thing or not, in the end, it is. It's where they go, and it's about their involvement at the institution. It's always going to be about the student.
Well, hello, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Chris Tech Chat, which will be focused on higher education and the edtech sector. I am Chris Harrison, founder and CEO of Talentus Global. We're a BPO and top nearshore outsourcing provider of tech talent and software solutions with deep expertise in higher ed and the edtech sector. I will start with a quote that I think will resonate with everyone watching this podcast and should give a good segue into the topic that will be discussed today. As enrollments times and budgets shrink, the institutions that survive won't be the ones with more systems, but the ones with fewer, smarter ones. Today, we're joined by Jason Duggan. He is the CEO of Thesis Elements, a modern student information system SaaS provider built for small and mid-sized colleges. With over a decade in higher ed technology, Jason has been on the front line of legacy SIS replacements, enrollment pressure, and institution-wide transformation. He's known for a no-nonsense, outcomes-first approach to technology, focused on what actually moves the needle for colleges, not just for what looks good on an IT roadmap. With a CFO background, Jason has been successful at articulating how the internal process of these challenges impacts decisions and needs across campuses. Today, we're diving into why the student information system has become a strategic necessity in higher education and how institutions can adapt as demographics shift, operations time, consolidation solutions take place, expectations accelerate, and many other integral topics that are relevant in higher education today. So with this in mind, Jason, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thanks, Chris. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. We're excited to have you here. Great. So I think we got a few questions and idea we want to run by you. From a lens, from your lens as CEO of Thesis Elements, knowing that you have a strong background in higher ed and ed tech and the CFO perspective, I want to get started right away with the first thought and really question for you. And has to do with student information systems, which we know today it has become a very hot topic. So from your perspective, Jason, why is the SIS, the student information system, such a hot topic right now?
We could spend all 45, 50 minutes on this one alone, but the SIS is it gets explained often is kind of the heartbeat of the institution. So if you want to replace your SIS, it's like open heart surgery, which unfortunately is required. So there's a lot of factors going in, Chris. So in January, Clearinghouse came out with their updated enrollment report, and it showed a 1% growth in enrollments across the sector, which is good. We've definitely seen declines in the past. It's smaller than last year in 2024, but the dynamics within that are changing. So less international students, public 4-year was up, grad was flat, slightly down, but privates are down further. And so what this is doing is it's putting more pressure on these institutions. Like you kind of had just said, enrollments are tighter, budgets are constrained, staffing levels are less and lean. And so what happens then when your SIS is the center of that ecosystem of the operations, it gets more scrutinized and it's much more closely identified to the institution of their needs. The other thing, just to talk about real quick, and we'll probably touch on this, or I've got more thoughts on this later, is there are market dynamics happening right now with acquisition as well that are putting people on notice. And so when you look at those combinations of legacy SIS solutions on-premise, security risks, needing to move to a modernized cloud, less staff at the institutions, lots of complexity within the organization and a tech stack, it is ripe for the opportunity to do something, to make a move, to not be behind the curve, but in front of the curve. And so that's what we really are seeing a lot in the market right now of why the SIS is such a hot topic. And it's a big enterprise solution. It's not just a point, hey, I've got this problem, go get that. Ask ChatGPT that. It can't do that. It's connected to the admissions, recruitment, Bursar, financial aid, all that. So it's a big core thing that institutions are talking about now.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think a lot of folks out there sometimes don't understand that in higher ed, your student information system is basically your ERP in other sectors, right? It is sits at, like you said, at the center. And when you're replacing those, it's like doing open heart surgery. But I think you touched on something important, which has to do with the operational efficiencies. And I'm assuming also that the competitive marketplace in higher ed, institution to institution, a good, solid, scalable, flexible, user-friendly student information system will definitely make the experience better both for the student, the faculty, and the administration teams as well, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that gets into getting to your tech consolidation pieces. And we've got a great customer up in the Northeast US. When we were pitching elements to him, he had this diagram of his whole ecosystem, Chris. And I mean, there had to be I can't remember how many solutions on there, but he also showed us his desired end state with the SIS being at the center and like 7 to 8 tentacles off of that. And that's the goal is how do you reduce the size of this stuff to make it more functional where the SIS is driving a lot of those behavioral items, but it's not the only thing they need.
Yeah, yeah, great point. And I think going into our next question, I think part of the conversation, part of your answer actually is driving into that. From your perspective, why you think is the market consolidation taking place right now?
Yeah, I mean there's different views on this, right? But when you think of a consolidation, I don't view it as, hey, we need one system to do everything, right? That's
Mhm,
not practical. There's
mhm.
no way one single all-encompassing ERP that includes SIS, HR, and everything else will fit one institution. It may for some of the large institutions out there, but those large institutions have huge IT staffs that they can fund and help run and keep that system going. Whereas when you talk about kind of the small and medium-sized institutions, that's not what they can do, and that's not what they're looking for. So from my point of view, consolidation doesn't mean replace everything with one giant platform. It's how do you reduce overlap, handoffs, fragmentation within the student-facing ecosystem, and integrating with clarity and cleanly with your finances and HR system is where it makes the most sense. So they need a system that really can support students and staff effectively. So I've got an example of, we worked with an institution where they had a very, very lean dev staff, right? And that gentleman was a SQL database expertise kind of guy.
Mhm.
And he, if anyone in the institution needed a report, they go to him, they put it in his queue, they say, where's my report? So they're not even getting data and things at their fingertips. And so the modernization, the consolidation of getting to a clean stack with the sys at the center helps them be more effective, efficient. And, consolidation's happening too because things are too expensive. Over time, institutions have added a point solution here, 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 here. So I've got a problem. I'm going to go get this solution.
Yeah.
And that actually just becomes more that they must contain and manage, and it's not possible when you do have smaller staff. And so they're looking at consolidation to bring things in, have great integration capabilities, good student-facing capabilities, and shrink their total cost of ownership at the same time. So it's really important that these leading CIOs and administrators are looking at what does tomorrow look like? Because
Mm.
yesterday and the day before, those are behind us, and that you won't be able to function at those levels in the coming years.
Absolutely. I think we're seeing even small to mid-sized colleges that have a very fragmented landscape in there where they pick so many solutions over the last 5, 7, 10 years that now they're unsustainable. And like you said, if they're relying on John, who is the only SQL developer
Yeah,
there, God forbid something happens to him, the
right.
institution comes to a halt. You cannot rely on that. You got to have a system that is scalable, that is flexible, that is open, and it's forward thinking in terms of feature. And at the end of the day, I think you would agree what the reason why we're here is because of students, right? We want to make sure that we provide the best experience to the students in the marketplace,
It always comes back to the student. That's the
right?
most important thing. Whether you think the SIS is a student thing or not, in the end, it is. It's where they go, and it's about their involvement at the institution. It's always going to be about the student. So your comment about quote unquote John at the institution creating reports. A lot of higher ed people are lifers too, right? And so they've
Yeah,
been at this institution 30, 40 years. What does happen when they retire? How do you get that skill? And some of that skill doesn't really exist in the marketplace anymore because people have evolved to modern technologies and AI reporting capabilities and such. So it's going to be a change in dynamic regardless of what that John does.
absolutely, absolutely. Great point. Moving into the next thought and question. From your perspective, how has decision making changed recently from
Yeah.
your point of view?
So Chris, I'll ask you something too, to make it conversational. Go back 15 years in the SIS. Who would you say was the most important person in the decision making?
Back in the day, decision
Yeah.
making.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's on the IT side, right?
Exactly.
Traditional, your VP of IT, your CIO, or your CTO, which is no longer the case.
Exactly. And that's where I think your question lines up too. With mounting pressures of enrollment, fighting for the same student bands in these smaller, call it sub 5,000 institutions, that dynamic has shifted. It is
Mhm.
clear that it's not an IT upgrade. It is a replacement with an implementation. And two, that CFO, that COO, if they have one, they're working in conjunction with that higher level IT person, director of IT, VP, IT, CTO, CIO, like you mentioned. It can no longer be just viewed through the lens of a CIO. Nothing against them,
Mhm.
but the ramifications of the ongoing operating costs, the staffing levels, the reporting capabilities, how these things are going to integrate with all the different solutions that, the CFO needs the ERP to work with it. There is a greater aspect and vision on budgets. And so it has changed into either that CIO, CTO, CFO, and president being conjoined. It is also because the SIS touches so many different functions from the registrar, financial aid, RUSAR, billing, all that their core, maybe not in saying that's the solution I want, but their needs have to be met throughout the analysis process. And so that all information is being brought up, not as just a, hey, what's the tech capabilities of this? It's a, how does this impact the whole institution, and what is the the 10-year total cost of ownership and all of that. And those decisions are being made in a group setting, if anything, but certainly the CFO is playing a greater role in these decisions now.
Yeah, and I would argue that the SIS even touches admissions and recruitment, right? So
Yep.
from the touch point of you're trying to attract a new student into your college until he or she even graduates and becomes an alumni. So it's a full 360 life circle that touches every single area of the institution and every other system out there. You're absolutely right. Back in the day, president would go to the VP of IT or director, say, go and look for this new system in place, this new sys, come back to us and let us know what it looks like, how much it's going to cost. Let's go ahead and implement it. Today, those decisions are no longer being made in a silo. Being made across the institution, like you said, from the from the president of the institutions, technology operations, finance, admissions, enrollments, even the academic side of it, right? Because at the end of the day, there'll be components that are going to be student facing. And I want to go back how important it is on the student experience because he or she is the first forefront, how he or she deals with the institution, usually through a student information assistance portal.
Yeah, and this is an industry, Chris, too, that has had failed implementations across suppliers out there. And those are catastrophic to an
Uh-huh.
institution. One, a budgetary place, but two, they were expecting new technology and getting efficiencies out of those. That president can no longer just sit there and say, I hope. It sounds like a good decision.
No,
They've got to know. Everyone is tied into this. And if there were a failure, everyone plays a role in it. So there is more scrutiny behind these decisions.
absolutely. Absolutely. When we talk about making decisions, oh, from why do you think institutions aren't worried about putting what we call all the eggs in one basket?
Yeah, that's a good one. So it really comes down to what eggs and what basket you're putting them into, I guess I'll say. As I was kind of mentioning, there isn't a definite need to have a SIS, ERP, HCM at the highest scale that you can get out there. These are smaller institutions. They can't work with those. We've got great partnerships with yourselves, like Sage Intacct is a great ERP,
Hmm.
bunch of HCM companies, Paylocity, all those types of companies out there. They provide those capabilities. I have an ERP today. I rarely contact my ERP, right? And so if I can put that onus on on that company to provide high quality technology and continue to release updates, then I don't really have to worry about that. I don't have an IT team here helping me with my ERP, right? I've shifted that off to my provider. And so when you think about putting all your eggs in one basket, it's really going to come down to, again, those eggs and baskets. You're going to have other solutions, but you don't have to put all of them into that conjoined ERP SIS HCM, which most of them were built by just integrating themselves, right? And so with new technology and great connectors on integrations and capabilities, finding the right solutions for your institution that are going to relieve your budgetary constraints as well as put that onus of dev, yeah, support, success onto the provider, it takes the onus off of the institution and puts
Yeah.
it back on that solution provider. And so that's where I would recommend the institutions are really investigating what happens next. And if I buy your solution, what happens then? What's the roadmap? What are things that you're working on? How's this going to impact my institution so that I can continue to manage my staffing levels as
And great point. I think if you look at the tech landscape, the ecosystem today versus, I would say, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, has changed dramatically, right? Now you have a large ecosystem of SIS providers, you have learning outcomes, student success, ERPs by itself, all of these providers that can integrate together very well. You put the ownership on them, they focus on all security, on all the compliance, all the SOX regulation and all that privacy things in place in there. And you worry about simply providing the best experience and make sure that they're sustainable and they're providing it with a strong financial model that where it makes sense for the institution to continue moving forward. So yeah, absolutely.
yeah, you hit on a big one that I even omitted was the security capabilities. I mean, there's just bad people out there that are trying to penetrate
Absolutely.
your on-premise solutions and do a ransomware, and it's known through all industries, higher ed included, but
Yes.
it's a large risk. So you take that risk and insurance capabilities off of your plate and you're shifting it, right? And that's big,
To the point that even institutions now they either they have outsourced or they have a CISO, Chief Information Security
right?
Officer, which is a role that never existed 15
Right?
years ago, right?
Yeah,
So
it's very protected information that's in there.
yeah, absolutely. How do so when we talk about acquisitions, right? And we've seen a lot taking place in the marketplace right now, a lot of market consolidation, a lot of M&A activity in 2024, 25, and I am sure 2026 will not be an exception. So how do these acquisitions fit into the overall model from your perspective?
They can be good and bad, right? If they're adding a new capability that helps again not increase your total cost of ownership or provides a function that you could actually take advantage of and it becomes an add-on so you can elect to purchase that versus being forced to purchase that. Those are different. You know, sometimes with acquisitions, all of a sudden you get something roped into your contract that you really aren't going to use. And that happens with large systems is there's so much capability in
Mhm.
them that 25-30% of it never gets touched. When you look at the acquisitions across this landscape, look, they've been happening for years and years and years, right? But the most recent ones, like Anthology, it has everyone cautious, right? And Anthology is
Yes.
an interesting dynamic, right? It wasn't necessarily just an acquisition; it was what happened before that acquisition.
Mhm.
They brought a bunch together, had a huge conglomerate, and things stalled. And when things stall, innovation stalls, support stalls, and customers are the ones that are on the end of that spectrum of getting less. And so it's super unfortunate. It's something that's really not been seen much in this industry, and
Yes.
it has customers cautious, right?
Yes.
We know anthology student is going to Illusion, and they're going to most likely, call their customer base split. Some will go with Illusion, and some are saying, I don't want to go there. And
Yeah.
so that puts them in a position where they're thinking about changing their stack. And so
Yes.
acquisitions can be very disruptive in the marketplace, and it's not great for the end user. It gives them an opportunity to redo and think through what they're going to do for the next 20 years, but it can be painful for them, especially what they're seeing. And so when they see something like the anthology, they are taking extra steps. They are, when they do contract reviews, when they do anything, when they talk about the implementation, they are being dot the I, cross the T, make sure everything's there, which they should do because they have that caution flag up, and rightfully so. It's a very unfortunate circumstance, and institutions will have to make decisions based on that.
Absolutely. I think you hit on a very good point, which is disruption. There's positive disruption when we have a new player coming into the landscape, providing capabilities that will help everybody in the ecosystem. And then you have negative disruption, which is where, because of M&A activity, you will impact the institutions that are running. They be, committed to a specific platform. And all of a sudden, they feel a little bit like in the air. What do we do now? What's going to happen next, right? And probably a lot of institutions they're at a crossroads now in this 2026 after this anthology sell out with Illusion, specifically on this suite information system on the ERP side, as to what do we do next? Do we stick with them or do we start looking at other providers, Elements, etc.? What do we do? Because if I was the president of an institution in place, I would be worried about as well, right? Am I going to be supporting the future? Now you got same provider that's got two information systems. Are they going to
Yeah.
provide product to development and roadmap for both of them, or are they going to consolidate into one and just throw away the other one? I mean, just so many questions and so much uncertainty in the marketplace that I think this is a very, very important subject and topic for this 2026 and beyond. So yeah,
Yeah.
great insight.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if I was to go out and acquire a company that provided an add-on to my capabilities that made something more seamless at the institution, and I'm able to provide that to the institution and say, here's your ROI. That's key. As we
Exactly.
talked about the CFO being involved, what's my return on investment? Great. That's something. This one, as we use the word again, more disruptive and has people on edge.
I mean, yeah, absolutely. You touched on something about what I call scalability, right? Which is really trying to do more with less. From your perspective, how do you think systems and platforms can help institutions do more with less, which I translate into scalability, right? Be able to scale out there operationally, financially, enrollment growth, and things like that. From your perspective, how do you think the system can help an institution scale?
Yeah, that's great. And they have to. That's the point of the solutions, right? And so the best systems will help automate things, but that's not just what they do, right? They got to remove work. And that means either fewer clicks, fewer manual reconciliations, less data entry, clearer workflows across teams. I'm going to use an example. This isn't a customer of ours or anything, but you know, we modern technology has changed how you do everything. So back in the day, you would have a piece of paper, you'd walk it to the end of the hall. That's time, that's effort, that's resource. That can't happen when you're doing it at a scale and magnitude of what these institutions are trying to process for students day in, day out. And so that modern system, it's got to make that smaller team feel bigger, not busier. And when systems are intuitive, integrated, staff can focus on the
Yeah,
students instead of workarounds. We always talk about here at Thesis Elements is we can deliver a rapid implementation that allows you to get back to focusing on that student, right? Resources are constrained and implementation's not easy for anyone. It's almost a second job. We want to focus on getting you in, out, and back to your core responsibilities day in, day out because it becomes part of that student. A student can't be sitting there trying to register, trying to pay a bill and saying, I'm sorry, I'm working on an implementation for month 18.
yeah,
Just can't happen. And so
that's unacceptable.
um, I've got a story about a gentleman that I've worked with for two stops, and he used to be a VP of enrollment at a college. And he would talk about every Friday he would meet with his president, and he would have a report generated at 8 a.m. And he would meet with the president at about 3 p.m. And he would always caveat his meeting with the president is, these enrollment numbers are as good as I got, but they're from 8 a.m. So I can't tell you if anyone's dropped or added within the last 7 hours, but that's what these institutions need. They need real capabilities
Real.
at their fingertips and BI, AI layers
Hmm.
that free up your resources to be able to use the data and information, work with the students, and take out that big clunkiness that keeps you bogged down day to
Yeah.
day and just clicking buttons, pressing papers, all that stuff.
Yeah. I'm going to go back to a friend of mine who used to run a very large institution. And the president said, I need to start getting enrollments real time because the reports that I get from deans, I don't trust them. They're in Excel. They're coming from different sources and place in there. To make a long story short, that CIO deliver those business intelligence real time reports to the president on a daily basis. And some of those deans no longer were deans of that institution because now they're able to get the information real time, centralized from a business intelligence data warehouse at their fingertips, which is something that is super important for leaders to be able to make decisions. So great. I'm going to go back to a little bit about, we talked about decision making, when you select information systems. From your perspective, what have you seen that are some of the mistakes that institutions are making when they choose a student information system, which I think is very important from a lessons learned perspective. And hopefully the audience will appreciate that and ensure that they don't go through the same route again.
Yeah, so the institutions cannot view this as an IT project upgrade, as I kind of mentioned before. You have to involve those key functional departments across the institution. If you look at it just from an IT upgrade, then your registrar, you get this new solution, your registrar may say, I don't even know how to use this. Certainly you would be trained in the implementation phase, but their roles and responsibilities complete and dynamic change, it's really hard for them. They've been doing stuff for maybe 20 years the same way. So you need some change management in that. And so a lot of these institutions need to make sure that they have change management capabilities, either outsourced, insourced, whatever it may be able to adapt to new technology, softwares, processes. One of the things I would highly recommend is not making decisions based on a feature checklist. The AI over here looks really cool, and these are demos, Chris. There's some great developers out there that can spin some stuff up. You got to go a couple layers deeper and really process those information through the student and through the system and validate those outcomes. Outcomes are more important than just a checklist of that looked great. Oh, and also and this is kind of the third, fourth time we've harped on it. Again, I just think it's super important is they have to involve that finance and operations team earlier in the process. So the most successful projects bring IT, finance, functional leaders conversations in early so that their expectations are all aligned from the start.
Yes.
You don't want fragmented conversations happen from any functional saying, I love this piece of software. That's what we have to go with. Finance says that's too expensive. Registrar says this doesn't work for me. It all has to be brought together. This has to
Well,
be looked at in the totality of purchasing a solution that's going to provide opportunity for your institution in the future.
yeah, no, that's definitely that's a great point. And these are enterprise wide efforts, right? These are projects that usually should be sponsored at the president's level, with the executive leadership endorsement and really everybody on board, right? Every department at the institution needs to be part of this enterprise wide implementation because at the end of the day, it's going to impact every one of them, right?
Every one of them. You may
Yeah.
you may not be a key user, but in some way, some facet, this will impact you.
And digging a little bit deeper, what do you think what should leaders at an institution should be asking before they think about modernizing and implementing their digital transformation plan, which a student information system should be part of that roadmap in place in there, right? There are a lot of other components in place in there. But from your perspective, what are some of the questions that they should be asking themselves, before implementing their digital transformation plan, that a lot of times the CIO will be driving that or delivering that or implementing that or architecting that.
Yeah, I'm going to make an assumption that they've already asked the why question. Why do we need to do this? Either it's a sunset legacy product, it's a point solution that no, they've run reports and the usage capabilities on it are super low. So it's a cost that needs to go out of the ecosystem. So assuming that those kind of conversations have already happened, because that's how most people think first is why do we need this?
Yeah.
Why do we add something? I focus on specifically for these small and medium sized institutions, how is this going to reduce my ongoing operational costs? As we talk about a team of 15 devs on an on-premise
Mhm.
solution, you again move that software and feature enhancement capabilities to the solutions provider.
Yep.
How does that change? There's still technologies. The dev department doesn't have to go anywhere, but their capacity gets freed up to work on other institutional IT projects that they may not have gotten to. But how is the cost of this solution going to impact my ongoing operating costs? What are the staffing assumptions does this solution make? Again, on-premise versus cloud solution is very different, but
Yeah.
if you buy a super complex solution in any function of the institution, there could be requirements that you need to staff XYZ to make sure this is functioning for your internal users as an administrator, for example, of all these solutions. What does this mean? It's not just a solution you bought, but you may have just required to hire 2 more additional roles that you didn't have budgeted. So what are these ongoing assumptions that this system makes? Lastly, again, coming back to it, how quickly will students feel the benefit? There has to be the student at the center of the ecosystem of
Mhm.
all things you're doing. Whereas the SIS has tons of different capabilities, the student plays a role in all of those, right? They go in and they register. How is their experience? They go in and from the application, they want to go to your institution. That part is still touching the SIS. It may not be the full SIS, and it may be a integration to the SIS, but how is their experience there? How when they go in and check their academic records, their grades, whether that be from the SIS, the LMS that's integrated, how is that experience? How quickly can you get up and running? How quickly can my students feel a new modern UI and capability of touching all these things? And what does year 2 look like? If we think about for us at Thesis Elements, year 1, shorter than year 1 implementation will get you live in less than 12 months, but what does year 2 look like then? What is your roadmap? What does my support level offering look like? What is my SLAs for any issues that come up? How am I going to work with you from a customer success side to get my institution's wants, needs into your product team and talk about how that could be prioritized in the roadmap and go forward? So how do you influence what's going to happen at companies like ourselves? We listen to the customer. We take their feedback through um, functional groups, conferences, and we really listen to them and bring it back. If you aren't looking at that from a leader before making modernization decisions, it's, hey, am I just stuck with what you're providing me today for the next X number of years till I have to make a different decision? You don't want to be making these decisions all the time. You need to be focused on your day-to-day responsibilities. So thinking about what year 2 and beyond looks like so
Yeah.
that you're in good hands and you're going to continue to get product release updates and modernization throughout. And that is the beauty of a SaaS solution, right? That is intuitive to what SaaS does, whereas you're on premise in the past, potentially you're stuck with that database, right? Any modernization, anything is coming from your dev team that's going to build it out from that database. So those are kind of the ideas I would think of for leaders before they do modernizing.
Great feedback on it. Great points. Um, you mentioned a lot ROI, scalability, operational efficiencies, and all those things in place. So, from your perspective, knowing that those are common pressures that every institution has today or are other SaaS companies, from your perspective, how can a company such as Talentus Global can help scale and really speed go to market for SaaS companies such as Thesis Elements?
Yeah, great question. So there's great developers all across the world, right? And I wouldn't say that they can't adapt, but higher ed is unique, right? Financial aid is a beast, and the changes at Department of Ed and financial aid and those things happen all the time. Modernizing the tech platform and getting things fast. So it really comes down to trust. When you're selling a solution to an institution, it has to be built not just on speed, but trust. Trust in that you are going to deliver, trust they're going to get live, trust that you're going to continue to modernize this. And when you think about how you do that, Chris, it comes from vendors like yourselves that bring a staffing and intelligent capability for modernization to that as well. And so when you work with teams like yourself, that trust falls down from the institution to Thesis Elements to our internal dev teams to outsourced dev teams, and the ability to deliver with speed, accuracy, and that trust capability are huge because the evolution of higher ed continues and the dynamics change all the time. A student is a student is a student, but their needs and how they reach those students and how that student processes through the institution and where those students are going, whether it be community college, grad school, 4-year, 2-year, those dynamics of how systems operate and work with those students change, and it has to evolve. And that speed to market and capabilities. It's one thing to go fast. It's one thing to go fast and deliver garbage. It's one thing to go fast and deliver quality and trust that you committed to institutions that, hey, this is what's on a roadmap. This is what we're going to deliver. And this is when we're going to deliver it. And it's going to be quality to go through that. Working with like a company like Talentus Global that knows this market, has core resales resources, has worked this market on that trust factor in the past, and the experience in the industry development needs helps deliver what institutions of companies like Thesis are needed. And so bringing in capabilities like that are just huge, right? It's one thing to go recruit developers, have them learn higher ed, get them coding. There's a quick ramp time to that. You need
Yeah.
internal resources just like those, as I was mentioning, but to be able to do ad hoc projects or staff augmentation or things to go faster with great quality, that's where you guys can play a great role.
Yeah, and that's a great point. And I think people sometimes underestimate the complexity of higher ed. It's a whole sector, it's a whole different lingo, it's a whole different language when we talk about students enrollment and admissions, financial aid, which is highly complicated as well. But I also think that there's two factors in there. One is from a higher ed or ed tech perspective, you got the go to market, right? How do you go to market fast with new features and capabilities going up? But then budgets and spending is going down as well. So you still go back to, I need to get there faster, quicker, but my spending is going down over a period of time as well, right? When we
Yeah.
talk about RIs, institutions and edtech providers and SaaS providers such as Thesis Elements are not exempt to that as well. You need to be able to have a new student portal or a new product out there quickly, fast enough. But at the same time, spending doesn't necessarily go up at the same time. So you need to be effective at how you spend your money and how you outsource with the right people, the right time. So then a short period of time, you can get where you need to be and have plenty of runway as you continue your roadmap.
Yep. Agree completely.
Absolutely. One last question for you from your perspective, for your desk. What's your outlook for the next 3 to 5 years in terms of the SIS, the marketplace, consolidation? Give us your thoughts just holistically, 360. Jason, what are your thoughts on that for the next 3 to 5 years? I know it's hard because we live in a very dynamic model. AI is changing dramatically a lot of the things in place in there. But like you said, a student is a student. What's changing in how he is consuming that experience, and things will continue to change and evolve. What we think is going to happen in the next 3 years might be completely different in the next 2 years as we approach year number three.
Yeah, I agree. And that's the goal of companies like ourselves is to monitor the technology changes and advance over time to provide that with the solution because go back 5 years, Chris, no one even knew what the words AI meant, right? And so now it's
Exactly.
on every posting everywhere and such. So yeah, those kind of things will continue to be monitored and adapted to. But over the next 3 to 5 years, I still see continued pressure on enrollments and budgets. Um, uh, and that comes from just the overall cost for and affordability for going to higher ed institutions, right? The cost to get educated is only gone up, rightfully so. Professors, teachers are extremely needed in a great role out there. And so there are going to be continued pressures from those budgets still to be seen. There's opportunity within there too. I mean, we're going to, I read an article where Ford was looking for 5,000, hire 5,000 jobs for skilled labor, right? And
Yes.
so there is a need still that might not be the 4 year, but it might be the 2 year, and those are going to pay good money. And so those are still, like we talked about, students. Those students are still going to go somewhere and go through the ecosystem of a registration or application registration student, all that stuff. So I still believe higher ed will continue to evolve. Well, there will still be enrollment increases, but that doesn't mean there won't be pressures on budgets. The other thing is there are still outdated technology stacks. There are plenty of on-premise solutions out
Yes.
there that institutions will need to modernize, and that's not an overnight thing. It's a planned approach and how you're going to replace those. And so those are going to continue over the next 3 to 5 years. So there will be more consolidation, more focus on affordability, and less tolerance for that complexity as budgets get tight. How do you do it? You either increase tuition, you increase enrollment, you cut spend. I mean, there's a couple things within there as well, but
Yeah.
those are the main levers to pull.
But
And
there's not much more you can do, right?
right. Yeah. There's not a ton. There's maybe don't build this new dorm and save the money, but that still would probably fall under the CapEx don't spend budget. But those are the
Sure.
levers
Right.
institutions
You know,
really
affect
have.
enrollments too, because you can't get students in the door. You
Right.
can't put them in
That
the
you
doors.
know, that kind of where it comes back to the student, their experience on campus, the housing, all of
Yeah.
that stuff is important. So we will still see movement in decisions making. The anthology news will it will push people to either migrate to a
Yes.
different solution or stay at home,
Yes.
depending on what their preference is. That's the dynamic that will continue to shift throughout that. Those are certainly unpredictable, but institutions are going to go through a rigorous process. They're going to continue to have extremely intelligent people running these institutions, extremely intelligent people in the roles beneath the president, making core decisions for them and making sure they're good decisions for them. So as enrollment tightens and budget shrink, the institutions that will continue to progress won't be the ones with more systems. They'll be the ones with fewer and smarter systems. And that's kind of the key is they have to evolve as the world is evolving too with technology. And that's going to be the key item for them.
Absolutely. No, I mean, spot on your prediction. The next, 3 to 5 years in place in there. Jason, I think this has been an awesome conversation. I did wanted to mention. I know you guys have an annual conference. Can you talk
Yes.
about your Elements Connect coming up this year?
Yeah, Elements Connect will be June 2nd through 4th. And these have grown every year that I've been here since 2021. And they're fantastic. Last year was my first year attending as a CEO. I attended the prior year as a CFO. They are so collaborative, Chris. So these are led by our team as well as our implementation partner, 3D Technologies. So there are keynote speakers, there are dinners, there are breakout sessions throughout the day where you actually deep dive and learn about the functional pieces of Elements and how your school is using it. There will be institution led deep dives. There will be key sponsors that will be there that will be showing how they help institutions with their integrated connectability or
Mhm.
capabilities that they can provide to institutions. So it's a great learning session for CIOs all the way down to core users. CFOs have attended. I usually talk to them most, and we nerd out on numbers, but it is super impactful for people that attend that. They leave with more knowledge. They learn from their constituents at other institutions that are in the same roles and say, well, you didn't know that you could do this. This is how I function with this. And so it brings a good group together of users that say, here's the best practices. And oh, by the way, their opportunity to tell us again what they want more in the product. And Jen Buyer, our CPO, takes all that feedback. We meet with them. We try to incorporate it. We use our internal teams, we use external teams like Talentus and get those moving for the institutions.
Sounds like it's a great platform for the customers and institution to be able to provide retrospect and feedback into the product roadmap. What are the features that they want to see in the future? A way to connect with some of their colleagues and all that stuff combined in place. And I think this year is going to be in Nashville, Tennessee.
Nashville, Tennessee, and we'll have a client appreciation night as well as prospective client appreciation night if they want to come and learn more about Elements. And we're going to do some axe throwing. So I probably stand in the way back in case I've offended someone so I don't have an axe thrown at me. But last year was bowling. We love to get together with our clients. So we'll be doing some axe throwing this year in Nashville.
Sounds like it's going to be a great event in there. Again, Jason, thanks for your thoughts and insights. I am sure the audience will appreciate this episode, and we definitely look forward to having you again in the near future. Folks, please don't forget to follow us on your YouTube channel at Talentus Global, and we'll see you on the next episode of the Chris Tech Chat. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Chris.